From MTN News, you're watching Montana This Morning.
The man accused of shooting at a Gallatin County detective, then fleeing through 3 counties, is back where it all started. Charges and bond for John Binkley coming up.
And a lawmaker in Helena says more limits are needed before recreational marijuana should be sold in Montana. What she says those limits should be and why it might be needed is also ahead.
6:30, Chet Lehman, Holly Brantley, Matt Elwell with you here on the final Thursday of February. I know Matt loves it when I do that.
I have no idea why you do that to me every single
I'm your
time.
friendly reminder.
On the
That's what I am.
final Thursday before the full moon in February.
Oh, it was beautiful this morning.
It still
long
is.
shadows, very nice, but it is brisk early on this morning. A little more than brisk out toward West Yellowstone. In fact, it looks like the temperature just froze up. We don't get it was 22 below, according to our weather watcher Ken there in West Yellowstone. 4 below in Butte. Looks like our temperatures will warm up today, but we also have another system moving in that'll bring a few scattered snow showers initially to the mountains, but we'll see that kind of spill over into the valleys by the time you head into your Friday and Saturday. And day planner today back into the 30s for the afternoon, but keep in mind the wind speeds are going to be picking up as you head throughout the day. That means wind chills will be cold. We'll break it all down for you, of course, coming up in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Matt. The man charged with shooting at a sheriff's detective last week and then leading law enforcement on a chase and standoff is now facing charges in Gallatin County.
35-year-old John Patrick Binkley is being held on a $750,000 bond after allegedly shooting at law enforcement at the Interstate 90 interchange in Logan. Now, according to court documents, Binkley led several agencies on a multi-county pursuit 130 miles from where it started here in Gallatin County. Chase ended in a standoff near Garrison with an arrest, which shut down the interstate for several hours.
This is a very serious charge, deliberate homicide and danger to the lives of law enforcement officers and the public at large. So based on the totality of the circumstances, Judge, the state's asking for bond to be set amount of $750,000.
Now, Binkley's next court appearance will be March 19th.
Well, police are still investigating a burglary to a Butte business from earlier this week. Dee's House of Hair on Front Street was broken into sometime early Monday by forcing open a front door. Several items were taken and the inside was left in disarray by the intruder.
And then once inside the business was rifled, and we're still working on exactly what's missing from the business, but there were some electronic items taken, and so we're trying to get a list of those items. So we'd appreciate anybody who has any information on that case as well.
Anyone with information is asked to call Butte Police at 497-1120.
A bit of an update for you here. There are now 3 finalists for Bozeman's Chief of Police. Jim Baumstark has more than 30 years of law enforcement experience with 16 at the executive level. Baumstark is Deputy Chief of the Asheville, North Carolina Police Department. Next candidate, Eric Polson, has more than 23 years of law enforcement experience. He's the current Deputy Chief of the Santa Ana, California Police Department. Third candidate, current Bozeman Interim Chief Jim Veldkamp. Part of Veldkamp's experience as he joined the Bozeman Police Department in 1999 includes being the Deputy Chief Drug Detective with the Missouri River Drug Task Force, and he was on patrol. He's lived most of his life in the Gallatin Valley. Now, all of the candidates will be in Bozeman March 18th for a virtual community forum. You can find more in-depth bios for each candidate by visiting our website.
Well, meantime, there's new information on what led to the termination of former Bozeman Schools Superintendent Bob Connors.
MTN News obtained nearly 50 pages of documents describing events between Connors and 2 unidentified administrators. Documents say an investigation started after the administrators reported Connors for verbal assault, claiming his actions left them afraid and shaken after Connors yelled at them in disturbing and explosive confrontation on October 19th. Now, on November 11th, the school board wrote a letter to Connors reprimanding him for his actions, saying while he did not violate district policy, his behavior was unprofessional and unacceptable, and he failed to meet the district's expectations.
Well, our policy 5015, that was the policy that we had to invest. So we are bound to investigate that. I think the documents speak for themselves. I do. I think the letter of reprimand speaks for itself.
Now, the school board approved a severance agreement for Connors, which terminated his employment. Casey Bertram is now serving as the interim school superintendent.
Montana lawmakers are hearing some of the first bills this session aimed at tightening limits on the future of recreational marijuana system. The House Business and Labor Committee heard testimony on House Bill 568, sponsored by Representative Lola Sheldon Galloway, a Republican from Great Falls. The bill would set a limit on the number of recreational dispensaries in each county to one for every 10,000 residents. It would also require those dispensaries to be at least 1,000 feet away from places of worship, schools, parks, and playgrounds. Sheldon Galloway said her intent is to limit youth exposure to marijuana once legal sales start, but opponents say by limiting the available licenses, smaller businesses will not be able to compete and large companies could dominate the industry.
The people of Montana have asked us to have recreational marijuana in our state. My bill is just asking for some sideboards on that.
The only way to operate and to provide for that many people, not including out of state, is you have to be a massive entity. And then so who gets to control that?
Also this week, the House Judiciary Committee advanced House Bill 517 to require stronger penalties for underage marijuana possession. Also at the state capitol, if a local government in Montana wants to regulate food packaging or grocery bags, they may soon be out of luck. The Montana House has voted for a bill that prohibits local governments from regulating or taxing auxiliary containers. That term is defined in the bill as a bag, bottle, cup, can, or drinking utensil or tool designated for transporting, consuming, or protecting food or beverage. The bill's sponsor, Republican Mark Noland of Big Fork, said any such regulation should be on a statewide basis. All 64 votes for the bill were Republicans, while 33 Democrats and 2 Republicans voted against it. Noland said it's meant to prohibit local regulation of things such as plastic bags or straws or styrofoam packaging. The bill faces a final vote before advancing to the Senate.
6:37 now. Parents know all too well that raising a child is expensive, but the new stimulus bill could make raising a child less expensive this year with an idea to expand the child tax credit.
Our Joe St. George breaks down what is being considered and how it could be game-changing when it comes to fighting child poverty.
Being a parent is expensive. A recent study by the Department of Agriculture found the cost of raising a child through age 17 is now $233,610 on average. But parents, more help could be on the way.
Well, the possibility for more stimulus checks receives the most headlines. The new stimulus bill, for the moment, includes an expansion of the child tax credit. And if you're a parent out there, that has the potential to make a big difference.
Under the proposal in Congress, parents of children who are 5 and under would qualify for a tax credit worth $3,600 per child. Parents of children who are 17 and under would qualify for a $3,000 per child credit. That's on average a $1,000 increase per child from current laws. And while the increased credit phases out for couples making more than $150,000 a year, that number could change before the final bill is signed into law.
The persistence of child poverty in America is really a national disgrace.
Tazra Mitchell is a policy advisor with the D.C. Fiscal Institute and says the biggest change is lawmakers are considering making some of the money available in monthly installments, like a monthly stimulus check, if you will. Mitchell says the point of that is to address child poverty in our country.
With each month, you would get a check that would help you make ends meet, put food on the table, and provide for your child.
Recent studies by the federal government show at least 14% of U.S. children live in poverty. That's over 10 million kids. Mitchell used to be part of that statistic.
My brother, my dad, and I, we were living in a motel, and thankfully it was tax season, and that was the only reason why we didn't end up in a shelter.
Right now on Capitol Hill, there's debate whether this extra money should be for just this year or permanent for years to come. Expect more on this in the coming days. The House of Representatives is set to vote on the latest stimulus bill by the end of the week. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
I just want to say that number again. 10 million children.
Right.
14%.
A lot to consider there.
Yep.
Well, it is 6:39 for you here on your Thursday. So coming up here in Montana this morning, what does COVID-19 have to do with rats in London? It's helping them reproduce and spread. The appalling details of that is coming up after the break. And Chet?
Only London. There you go.
Indeed.
Let's check in with Gail King to see what's coming up at 7 o'clock.
Good morning to you. Ahead on CBS This Morning, the FDA says Johnson & Johnson's single-shot vaccine is effective and safe, paving the way for emergency use authorization. We'll take a look at how it could change the fight against COVID-19. Also, a CBS News investigation looks into claims there are violent gangs of deputies within the LA County Sheriff's Department. Hear what deputies who are not in the gang say the alleged gang members are doing. And Malcolm X's family says a newly discovered letter implicates the NYPD and FBI in the death of the civil rights leader. First, on CBS This Morning, we'll talk with Malcolm X's daughter about this new claim. We'll see you 7 o'clock on the dot.